You're watching The Issue Is.
And welcome to The Issue Is. Other than the governor, the Speaker of the Assembly in California is the most powerful person in the California government. Robert Rivas is the 71st Speaker in state history. Just last June, I want to show you some video of this. He first took the oath of office. He's been in the legislature since 2018. He's from Hollister and is the grandson of a labor leader who worked in the farms and advocated alongside Cesar Chavez. Speaker Robert Rivas, welcome to The Issue Is, and great to have you in the House for the first time.
Well, Alex, I really appreciate the invitation to be here. It's, I've spent so much time here in Los Angeles. It's become my home away from home, but really excited to be here.
All right. Well, obviously we want to talk about all the state politics, but there was this huge national story that sort of overwhelmed everything else this week. Donald Trump convicted of 34 felony counts, falsifying business records to cover up a relationship that was alleged with a porn star, first president ever convicted. Your reaction to that? Well,
I think I was shocked, but certainly wasn't. I wasn't surprised in any way. I think that my takeaway from it, my initial reaction was that Donald Trump was finally held accountable, and no one is above the law. No one is above the law, even an ex-president, and he's absolutely unfit for office. We know that, but at the same time, I think verdict or no verdict, this whole process has been exhausting, and it's disappointing. We are months away from one of the most consequential elections of our lifetime, where our presidential candidates should be focused and talking about the issues facing Americans and offering solutions to those problems, not fighting to stay out of prison. And so certainly, we need to move forward. Obviously I'm squarely behind Joe Biden. As I mentioned, a Trump presidency wouldn't be good for California, wouldn't be good for this country. I look forward to doing all I can to support Joe Biden.
A lot of Republicans are going to say this case should have never been brought. They view this as a misdemeanor at most. They think it's trumped up charges, and they think that it might actually start to bring people together for Trump and against the Democrats. Do you worry that there may be some pushback to this, that maybe this wasn't the right case to go after him on, and it may actually help Trump? Sure.
We could talk about the merits of the case, but I think, in 2020, it was a President, Donald Trump, who lost his reelection bid. And he lost it because, he governed this nation very poorly. As I mentioned, he's unfit to serve. My commitment is to do everything that I can to support Joe Biden, to ensure that he is reelected, to go to battleground states, to do my part, to ensure that we reelect a person who is focused on addressing the problems that we all care about and that will move this country forward.
Are you worried that this might actually help Trump?
I don't know if it helps him, if it hurts him. All I know is it doesn't change my opinion of him, that he's unfit to lead this country. And I hope that others, and no others, will agree that, it's time that we start to focus on issues that are impacting all of us.
Well, let's focus on some issues here in California. You are responsible, along with Governor Newsom and Senate Leader Mike McGuire, of sort of negotiating a budget deal on behalf of all of your respective caucuses. We've got a photo of the three of you meeting recently to talk about this issue of the budget. Just this week, you and McGuire came out with your version of what you'd like the budget to be, and the governor has his version. Let's start with this, because there's been so much talk about the budget, and there's been lots of different numbers thrown around. What is the budget deficit in California right now?
Right. Well, I think the budget deficit, as we know, this is, unfortunately, the issue we're facing isn't isolated to this year. We know that we're facing a multi-year structural deficit, which is a problem. When you talk about the numbers, I know that there's been a lot of some different numbers thrown out there by the governor, by the LAO. Whether it's we're tackling a deficit of around $70 billion, over a 2-year period. But as I mentioned, this is a multi-year problem. I'm proud of the work we have done, this collaborative legislative budget plan that we've developed with the Senate. My a long time a budget analyst and director in our office, said that in recent memory he can't think of a budget that the proposal that we put forward, it balances our budget. It's a proposal that balances the budget without sacrificing our most vulnerable people, without ensuring that we're not balancing this budget on the backs of our most vulnerable. And I know that there's some differences in our proposal and that with the governor. But I am very, very confident, working with the governor, working with Pro Tem McGuire, working with our legislative, our colleagues, that we will deliver an on-time budget that is responsible and that plans for the future.
So so is it $27 billion deficit? Is that what we think it is right now?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, so that's the number that you're all working off of. So you come up with this plan. So real simply, for people that are watching that are concerned about things like public safety, concerned about their kids, concerned about different things, what is your budget proposal? What is the priority in the most simple terms?
In the most simple terms, we have a budget plan where we're really focused on 4 areas that are a huge a priority for myself and in our plan. And that's 1, fighting to preserve and protect very important, critical housing programs and efforts to not only protect funding for homeless programs, but actually boosting that number to provide local governments the opportunity to continue to do the work that is being done here in Los Angeles by Mayor Bass, to ensure that that work it continues. We continue to make progress. We know it's a problem that is spiraling and continues to get worse. But what's different about our proposal is we're attaching very strict accountability, efficiency measures, really focusing also on prevention. Once we house a homeless individual, we have to do everything we can to keep them there. The other area is education. We have to ensure that schools have the resources, have the funds to ensure that students will excel at the highest level. And then the 4th area is our reserves. We know that we have done a really good job in amassing reserves, but because this is a multi-year budget problem we're facing, we don't know what to expect in the future. But what we do know is we need to be as prudent as possible to save those reserves for when a crisis should occur or if the situation gets worse.
So you and McGuire have your plan. The governor has his plan. What's the biggest disagreement between your 2 plans? Well,
I think the way both agreements are structured, they are structured there's some slight differences in how we achieve a balanced budget. As I mentioned, those areas where we're pushing back are in critical housing, homelessness programs, really doing a lot more to protect safety net programs, to protect our most vulnerable families. It was mentioned in a hearing by one of my colleagues yesterday in the legislature. It was a budget hearing. And my colleague mentioned that, this is a state here in California where we have faced some challenging times, and we've gotten through them. We are going to get through these challenges. Yeah. But getting through it isn't enough. And it's not enough because we certainly have to do a much better job ensuring that when we emerge from this budget challenge, that we do so stronger as a state, that our state is set up to better handle future economic uncertainties. But then also we have to have a plan, a responsible plan for the future. Yeah. And what I mean by that is if you look, Alex, at the data, accountability matters. Over the last decade, our state, when it comes to spending, we have been very poor at living within our means. And what I mean by that is a decade ago, 10 years ago, state government expenditures were around $100 billion. Just last year, our budget exceeded over $200 billion. That's a double. That we have doubled our spending, and yet year-over-year tax revenues have increased as well. And I know if my household income, if our spending were to double, I would anticipate that my quality of life, the quality of life of my family would improve. The same should be said for the state of California. We have increased the amount of spending, but it's, the impacts it's had in the delivery of high-quality public service to residents, marginal at best. Yeah, we have bright spots. We've done some good work that have made a difference, but it's not enough. We have to do better. We have to make more progress. It's about results. That's why my commitment in my tenure as Speaker is about results. It's about doing what is necessary to attack and address the problems that are impacting California.
So you're saying that we've doubled our spending and yet we aren't seeing a lot of results. Why is that? What are we doing wrong? And people are going to hear that and they're going to say, you guys are in charge. It's a Democratic supermajority. How did you let that happen?
Absolutely. I think that is a fair question to ask, and that's why my focus and that of my colleagues has been around accountability, is certainly doing a lot more to ensure that we're doing a better job to ask those hard questions, to ensure that government spending, that programs are actually achieving results.
Yeah.
And that's why I mentioned our proposal in this budget to increase and add another round to a homeless program, through grants to local governments, that we're attaching these strict accountability measures to those programs that will result in efficiencies, but also will address the urgency issues, or the urgency with which we need to address these issues, ensuring that local governments really are digging in and doing the work and doing it in a way that's going to make progress, but we'll go much further in addressing this problem as soon as as we can.
So if you got a $27 billion deficit, last year you had a $100 billion surplus, you got to cut from somewhere. Sure. So where do we cut? Where do we make up that $27 billion?
I can't get into these specific cuts, but I know that the budget that we have put forth is, agree with the governor and his approach in across, just an across-the-board cut to state agencies and to certain departments. Our proposal, we agree with the governor in suspending certain tax loopholes and tax credits. But at the same time, it's being strategic in how we have developed a budget that, one, is going to protect core services, that is going to plan for the future through preserving critical education funding and programs. But at the same time, it's about accountability. We have to be more efficient in the programs that exist, in funding allocations that are made. And that's why it was a priority of mine when I became Speaker in creating a new Budget Subcommittee 7 on accountability and oversight, where we've had a number of hearings. It's chaired by Avelino Valencia from Anaheim, who has he's dug in, he's done the work, asking the hard questions to ensure that if we're allocating billions of dollars to address homelessness, why is the problem seem to be getting worse? What can we do differently to ensure that our investments are actually paying off?
So let's talk about education for a moment, which is a huge part of the budget, of course, and let's make some news. So are you in favor of a bond to increase education funding?
I am in favor of a bond. These bond discussions have been going on for weeks and months. We're currently in negotiations on what possible bonds will be on the November ballot. And my feelings about any bonding is bonds should go to critical state infrastructure. The reason why I have prioritized a school facility bond is because one of the largest infrastructure areas in our state are our public schools. And education is the pathway to the California dream. Education is the pathway to achieving the American dream. Upward mobility. I have a lifelong stutter.
Yes.
So mobility. And you look at my example. For instance, I'm a first-generation Californian, and my grandfather immigrated here from Mexico because he believed in this state, believed in opportunity, believed in the California dream, that this is a state that would give our family opportunity. And he always spoke to my brother and I, encouraged us that he worked in the field. He was a lifelong farm worker, so we didn't have to, because he wanted us to go to college. He wanted us to get an education. And now I'm the 71st Speaker of the state of California because of that hard work, because of that encouragement from my family, and because of the opportunities I've had, especially in higher education. And so when you talk about the need around our school infrastructure, in every assembly district, every county, every city across the state, especially here in Los Angeles, we can point to a school where too many of our kids, too many teachers are learning and working in a crumbling environment, a crumbling school. One of the most recent a data point that I read was that nearly 40% of California's students attend schools where the facilities don't meet the minimum standards. It's unacceptable. And when we talk about the improvements for modernization, the opportunities to improve school infrastructure, we're talking about some serious issues here, from lead-contaminated drinking water to inoperable heating and cooling systems at schools, especially at a time where our climate is changing. We're talking about unmanageable class sizes for teachers, and we know that this is impacting student achievement.
Sure.
This is it impacts student discipline issues, but it's also a motivating factor behind qualified and quality teachers leaving the profession.
So you're proposing, and this is the first time you've said this publicly, the idea of a bond on the November ballot to have increased education funding. Do you have
for school facilities?
For school facilities,
specific to school facility improvement, renovations, and modernization efforts.
And what's the status of that? Have you spoken to others on that? Have you spoken to the governor on that?
I have. The governor has been very much engaged. And we know that he led the way when it came to the November proposition was a Prop 1. And so we have been actively having conversations, myself in particular, with Pro Tem McGuire. And so the potential, we know that we have limited bonding capacity, somewhere around some $20 billion. This November, but we also understand that November is an opportunity. We expect to have a higher electorate, but whatever we move forward with, whether it's a school facility bond, a potential climate bond, we have to do the hard work to convince California voters why the investment is worthwhile. That's why I've prioritized a school facility bond, because in my opinion, there's nothing more important than investing in our schools, in our future, which is our children.
A big issue that you've been dealing with is retail theft. You set up a retail theft task force. You've had a committee focused on this. You introduced legislation yourself. It's co-sponsored by Rick Chavez-Burr.
That's right.
Who's leading this. And now you've passed legislation on this. Specifically, what does your legislation do, and what's the status of it?
Well, look, I knew the expectations that were placed on me as I entered this role. I also, I don't need a public opinion poll to tell me that crime is a concern. I come from, this is my 14th year in elective office. I served 8 years at the local level as a county supervisor. Public safety has always been a top concern for residents in any part of this state. We all want the same thing. We want to live in a safe community. We want to be able to go to the park without the fear of our safety. We want to be able to go to a retail store or go shopping without any threats. But we have all are very aware of the concerns that exist. I've seen them firsthand. When you talk about this issue of organized retail theft and organized retail raids, we've seen the social media videos, we've seen on the nightly news the impacts, and it's having a chilling effect on our communities. And so our focus, I mobilized and created a new committee in the Assembly to focus on this issue. We brought people together. We brought stakeholders together, law enforcement, criminal justice organizations, community groups. We brought small businesses, retailers to the table to, one, better understand the problem, but two, to find pathways to solve this problem and crisis. It resulted in a bipartisan package of 7 legislative bills. We've been engaged with the governor's office. We've been working side by side with the Attorney General. This is a complex issue. We have addressed it through these 7 bills. These are bills that, one, will make a difference in our communities, will provide law enforcement with the tools they need, new tools, to hold those that are committing these crimes accountable. And, broadly speaking, what these bills do is if somebody steals from a store and they have the intent to sell these in an underground market, an online marketplace, they can be charged with a felony. You know, and the other aspect is this is around aggregation, which means if it's much easier to prosecute somebody if they steal from multiple jurisdictions. For the same offense, if they intend to sell it, then they can be charged with a felony.
Basically, if you steal multiple times, right
Throughout
now it's
the state,
hard.
that's right.
They are misdemeanors, but now it could all be put together.
Right.
So that's happening, and that's on a fast track, right? You expect to have that done?
That is on a fast. As you know, as I've mentioned, this has been a collaborative effort.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what, you know, I love about the work we do in this legislative process is, you know, my willingness to bring people together, to engage on this issue, and to fix these bills as they've moved throughout the legislative process. As I mentioned, the governor's been very engaged. We're fast-tracking these bills, expect them to be on his desk within a month, and will sign these bills. Sign
the bill, be done into law by the end of the month.
Yes.
Meanwhile, there's an effort going on to try to get Prop 47 reformed, sort of similar concepts.
Right.
It's supported by some Democrats, including the mayor of San Francisco, the mayor of San Jose.
Sure.
There's a lot of Republicans across the state, too. Do you support that idea?
I don't support it. You know, I appreciate their efforts. You know, I haven't been engaged on that initiative. I know we expect to get word if it qualifies in short time. Their efforts to overturn Prop 47, our focus hasn't been...
They say reform Prop 47.
Reform Prop 47. Our reform overturn, our efforts have been focused on organized retail theft. My focus has been on the area that I can control through the legislative process, about bringing people together. What I don't support about this initiative, or really, you know, the issues I see with the initiative process, is nobody wants special interests, you know, creating these laws and then they're put on the ballot. A lot of this, you know, a lot of the messaging involved, you know, is complex. It's, you know, a lot of people are misled, but the work we have done, our focus hasn't been on 47. It has been on the issue of organized retail theft. The problems that have existed, that are occurring in our communities. We are aware of it. We hear our residents loud and clear, and we've done something about it.
Do you think Prop 47 is working?
Yeah, I think Prop 7. You know, I think you know, when you look at Prop 47, you know, as I mentioned, this is a state that has, you know, we're well aware of the mistakes from the past that led to mass incarceration. California has led the way when it comes to criminal justice reforms. There's no going back on that. There's no turning back the clock. But we know that we can do things that, you know, we can address problems as we have done through organized retail theft by bringing people together, understanding the problem, and then at the end of the day, holding people that are violating the law, that going around current laws, holding them accountable. It's about accountability. We know that, and we're always going to be prepared to look in the rearview mirror. As I always urge my colleagues, you know, accountability is important. It's about results. And that's why I've always urged my colleagues to look in the rearview mirror to ensure that the laws we are passing are working, that they're having a positive impact and making a difference in the lives of the over 40 million people who call California home. That's a big part of our job.
But you know, there's lots of prosecutors and lots of cops and lots of other folks who say that Prop 47 isn't working, that it's made it harder for them potentially to arrest people, to prosecute people, that it's sent a bad message to criminals, that they aren't consequences. What do you say to those people?
You know, well, I think, you know, this is a complex issue. You know, because, you know, many of the people that you have stated, whether it's prosecutors, you know, they have been very critical of Prop 47 from the day it was passed. Yeah. And there's been a lot of research and reporting on the merits of 47, the impact it has had. Our focus, again, has been on organized retail theft. Yeah. And there's no scapegoating this issue. And that's why, you know, fully understanding what is occurring in our communities is very important, has been the motivating factor behind the bills, the package of bills that we have developed that are going to make a difference and that are going to improve the conditions that we've been experiencing.
We are talking with Robert Rivas, who is the Speaker of the Assembly in California. You've been in that job about a year now. What have been your big takeaways or surprises, or in terms of being in that job?
Yeah, well, you know, nothing has really surprised me of this job. I knew exactly what to expect. You know, I think always the most challenging part of this job is the time away from home. You know, I do have a young family. I couldn't do this job without my wife. You know, she plays the role of two people most of the time. I have two young children. But this is, you know, I certainly, I love my job. You know, I've loved serving in the legislature, and certainly serving as Speaker now has given me so much purpose. You know, when I think of what I'm most proud of as I near the one-year mark of being in this role, I'm excited at the energy, the focus that we have brought to this office, the different style of leadership we have brought to the Speaker's office. You know, my leadership style is always about direct engagement.
What do you think is the biggest difference between you and maybe the last Speaker?
Well, I think, you know, every
Anthony
speakership is different. You know, it's based on, obviously, the times that we're living in, the politics of the time. It's driven by the issues we're facing. And that's why, you know, I mentioned the energy I've brought to this office, the focus, and the fact that my leadership style has always been about engagement. Again, this is my 14th year in elective office. But when you talk about the diversity of California, you know, we're the greatest state in the country because of our diversity. It's what built this state, and it's the future of this state. The diversity of our people, our culture, the diversity of our natural environment and resources, the diversity of our economy. Yeah. And so when you talk about, you know, all of this diversity, for me, it's having a direct connection to the issues, the problems, and the people who live here in all parts of California. And that's why I have focused so much time here in Los Angeles, why we have an office here in Los Angeles. We have an incredible staff here. But the best part of this job is having the opportunity to spend you know, our time here in California, or here in Los Angeles, in all parts of California. Because certainly, you know, although I'm from the central coast of California, in the Monterey Bay region, our issues are just the same as the issues in Los Angeles. Yeah. We're dealing with massive, you know, homeless issues, with traffic congestion, you know, with, you know, incredible housing pressures and high cost of living. Yeah. Everywhere I go, I hear the same message. People are concerned. They're concerned about their future. They're concerned about issues in their community. They're concerned about, you know, housing prices and excessive rents, and they expect us to do something about it. And that's why my speakership, the tenure of my speakership, is, you know, about results. You know, it's about focusing on making this a better state.
Talk to us about your journey a little bit, for people that are just getting to know you, in terms of the way you got to this job, and how your family's experience really has shaped your worldview. Absolutely. Well, you know, as I've mentioned many times, if you would have asked me as a kid, or if you would have mentioned that one day I'd serve in the in the state legislature or as Speaker, I wouldn't have thought it possible. You know, one, I am a first-generation Californian. I've shared many times. I grew up with a debilitating stutter, which has been challenging at times. But I grew up in poverty. You know, I was raised by a family of immigrant farm workers who came here from Mexico. I grew up, you know, the first decade of my life in the 80s, and I lived in overcrowded housing and attractive migrant farm worker housing. But, you know, at the same time, it was that loving support from my family, the encouragement from my grandfather, who raised my brother and I. It was my grandparents. My mom was a single parent. I never had a relationship with my biological father, but it was his encouragement to always work hard, that this was a state of opportunity. Yeah. And that's what drives me. That's what motivates me. I have two young kids. They're the future. Their generation. We have to do so much more to ensure that the opportunities that you and I have enjoyed in the state, that they will enjoy them as well. And that's why when, you know, I talk about, when we had our conversations about the budget, about, you know, spending and being responsible, you're not going to convince me that residents today are better off than they were a decade ago. And that's the problem, is we've got to do a much better job of focusing on how we can become more efficient, how we can be more, how our state government can be more effective when it comes to ensuring that the future of this state is secure. So who's to blame for that? Well, I think it's all of our responsibilities. We're all in this together. And certainly we can always do a better job. You know, we could always play Monday morning quarterback. But I mean, you know, a lot of people are listening to this that will hear that and say, sure, look, there have been Democratic supermajorities, there have been Democratic governors, and if the situation's gotten worse, shouldn't there be a leadership change? Sure. Look, and that's my focus. You know, and that's why, you know, when you talk about what I'm most proud of, it's this culture that we're establishing, you know, in the Assembly. It's, you know, it's about results.
People want results. And the only results aren't just going to happen. You know, we have to work very hard. I don't have the answers to everything, but I will stop at nothing to find the answers, to bring people together, to address some of our most challenging problems that face our state. We have to do a much better job. And it starts with accountability. And I want to be held accountable when it comes to, you know, addressing homelessness, when it comes to addressing the high cost of living and the pressures that so many Californians face. We have to do a much better job when, you know, it comes to addressing these problems that people care about and expect us to do something about it.
What does accountability look like? What does that mean?
Well, I think for me, what accountability looks like as leader of the State Assembly, as I mentioned, you know, one of the one of my first actions was creating a new budget subcommittee, Budget Subcommittee 7 on accountability and oversight, where we are doing investigative work to better understand the effectiveness of state programs and their efficiencies, to ensure that we are always focused on results. You know, too many times we'll get reports or we'll read articles about how outcomes aren't there, and we've invested billions of dollars. You know, a good example is we've invested billions of dollars in my time in the legislature on homelessness, but the problem seems to be only getting worse.
Right, $24 billion.
That's right. The problem seems to be getting worse. We have to do a better job to understand what is working and what isn't working. I commend the efforts here in Los Angeles under Mayor Bass. She's really taken this issue on. And it really is a two-way, it's a collaborative effort here. It's a partnership. And that's why I spend so much time traveling across California to understand the challenges and issues that our communities are facing all across California. Having that connection is the first step to develop the solutions and pathways to those solutions at our state capitol.
Well, I want to wrap things up by doing something fun. This is called Personal Issues. This is where we get to know some of your favorites real quick. So this is the first thing that comes to mind. Rapid fire.
All right.
Here we go. Some of your culture favorites. Last TV show that you binged?
Seinfeld.
Binge Seinfeld. Last book that you read?
One of my favorites, a local favorite. It's called The Grapes of Wrath, John Steinbeck.
Oh, there we go. Favorite sports team?
LAFC.
LAFC, Dolly Dolly, black and gold.
Yeah.
Favorite Republican?
Favorite Republican? Well, I'd have to say, oh man, that's a tough one. Holy moly. You know what? Arnold Schwarzenegger.
There we go. What's the best thing about being a Californian?
The best thing about being in California is this is the most incredible state in the world. You know, it's we have incredible weather, incredible people. There's no state like California. I'm proud to call myself a Californian, and that's what motivates me every day, to ensure that my daughter, my son, that they're going to enjoy this incredible state as I have.
Well, the last time that we played Personal Issues with you, I asked you what your favorite song was, and you said La Bamba, and you even danced for us.
I did. I did dance.
Here's some of that. Look at that guy's moves. I like that. That's how you got your wife, right? So, you also told us that your favorite musical artist was Prince. So we've got some Prince music for you. Let's go crazy as we go to break. Speaker Rivas, thanks so much. Appreciate it. Thanks so much for the time.
Thank you.
And let's go crazy.
Let's go crazy.
All right. What was that move? Here we go. Very nice.